got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes. I only got one thing on my mind. You got me stuck on the thought of you. You're making me feel brand new. You're more than a sunshine in my eyes. I'm feeling like this might be my time to shine with you, with you, with you. I got my head out the sunroof. I'm blasting our favorite tunes.
Hi, welcome to In the Middle and Out of the Box, episode 29. Today we're going to have Camicia's Corner for each of the towns. So we're going to be doing Delray, Highland Beach, and Boca. And then we're going to be going into the housing market locally and maybe another option that isn't very well known to a lot of people that's maybe available to you if you're thinking of moving or buying. So I'm going to go over that. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about is Disney, some new changes to Disney, and of course, science, technology, and art. So let's get started with Camicia's Corner. So the first town we're going to talk about is Highland Beach. We haven't talked about them in a while, so it's time to talk about them. As everyone knows, they are building a fire department, and they're pulling back from Delray Beach, and I think it's going to go live next year. And they are in the midst of heavy building right now, construction. They've done an enormous amount of movement in a short amount of time. I don't know if everybody was aware, they were delayed for a while. Their original design, we currently have a fire station in Highland Beach, and originally they were designing it for that footprint. But I guess they realized they need additional space for additional vehicles and additional room in the firehouse for other things. So they actually moved the firehouse where it was going to be located to the front area of the parking lot right in front of Town Hall. And so they have a new footprint for the fire department. And now that that was established and redesigned, they're going full force and the construction's taken off like crazy and they're doing well. A lot of people in Highland Beach are not happy of the new location because that's where a lot of the activities and events happened in that huge front parking lot right in front of Town Hall, the Christmas tree lighting and things like that. And unfortunately, again, this is all based on years and years of poor planning and penny wise, pound foolish. So I think I had mentioned in an earlier episode that even prior to me, they actually, Town of Highland Beach actually had an opportunity to purchase a large piece of property directly across from them on the ocean side that was vacant for years. And they decided not to pursue that or purchase it. And at that time, it was very reasonable. We did have a lot of money in the bank at that time from the sale of some storage tanks to Boca and so forth. And so it wasn't a matter of lack of money. But again, it was just a poor decision. And now we're out of room. So that's why this new fire department is kind of squeezed into the parking lot that we have, taking away an enormous amount of parking spaces. And again, also taking out the community space that was used for events and so forth. So again, I tell you this because it's just so important to really think about long term as far as vision and what's needed rather than just in the immediate. And so if you think about years ago, if that was purchased, again, that could have been the site for the fire department, or there could have been another building over there for the town. I know down in Boca and Palmetto, they have a fire station right there on A1A on the east side also. So again, just some forethought is really important, and it's a lesson learned. Unfortunately, a lot of the towns, although these lessons keep coming up, they just keep making the same mistakes. So anyway, we're celebrating, and the construction on this is going well. It's going to be up and running by next year. I think it's May, I want to say, if I remember correctly. Here's the actual footprint. So there along the right side of the picture, you'll see A1A, and you'll see this is right in front of the actual chambers for the town hall and the meetings. And so there's a significant piece that is taken out there. So that is the latest on Highland Beach's firehouse. There's another major controversy, which is kind of actually related to this. Again, poor decision making. So what's happening is the Milani Park vacant land that's been there for over 20 something years, which is going to be developed as a park, a county park. Let's start going a little bit back further. So Mrs. Milani and her husband wanted to they lived in Highland Beach a very long time, have property here, many pieces of property, and they decided that they wanted to sell this property to the town to provide a park, right? Because something Highland Beach didn't have was a park. And so, of course, poor decision making. Surprise, surprise. Highland Beach turned them down, couldn't agree on a price, whatever. So they passed. So, of course, as soon as Highland Beach passed, Palm Beach County was interested and scooped it right up and purchased it. Okay, so let's fast forward 20 plus years, 23 years, something like that. It's just been sitting there being, vacant, being taken care of, obviously. But what's happened now is because of the population explosion in Palm Beach County has to actually have a certain percentage of park space based on population. So for so much population, you need so many parks. And so they've gotten to that point now where they have to expand their parks. They don't have enough parks to match up with the severe increase in population. So it is time for Milani Park. That's up next. So they are now indicating that they're going ahead. They're doing all the prep work, the engineering, and they're going to start breaking ground. And that's going to be the next park to be developed. Now, when I was on the commission a few years back, and the prior mayor or one of the commission members, Weinroth, was on the board in Palm Beach County Commission, I had met with him several times along with Mrs. Milani and her family and so forth, trying to figure out a best way to develop this park along with the town manager. And at that time, it was basically just sitting there. They wanted to try to get it developed, and Mrs. Milani really wanted to see it developed. I think she's in her 80s or late 70s, and so she really wanted to see it developed. And so, unfortunately, the county said they were going to start prepping the park and getting it ready. They had a 5-year window that was extended, and they never did any work on it in this last 5 years like they said they were going to do, so that when that 5-year mark hit, they were going to be ready and shovels in the ground. So now they're starting at zero. They haven't done any prep work, but that is going to be starting now. So I know it's a little confusing, but basically the problem is the town, right? So the town is, again, they passed on it originally when they could have had it, which meant they had control over that park. Even if they wanted to just make it a small passive park, no parking spaces, just for the residents to walk to, whatever, they could have done that if they purchased the park, but they didn't. So again, now it's in the county's hands. It's been in the county's hands for many years, and they have the green light and they're going ahead because the regulatory requirements of having park space to residents is off now, and they need more park space. So the controversy is this. Here's a map of the park. So if you look at the left side of A1A, there's a large area that's actually floods quite often. It's part of like a mangrove area. It does tend to flood. And so the majority of the park is going to have to be on the right side, on the east side. Well, that's a problem for the residents of Highland Beach because the majority of residents of Highland Beach are vehemently opposed to having anybody have beach access except them. There is no public access to beaches in Highland Beach right now. And honestly, that's one thing that makes Highland Beach a little bit special is that it doesn't have it's all private beaches. So, but again, this is a county park now. So they are in negotiations again to try to figure out what they're going to do to how they can limit not only the parking spaces, here's a better diagram of that, the amount of parking spaces to limit the amount of traffic. And this is one of the designs, the latest designs. I don't know if it's been revised since then, but they're going to start with phase 1 where they're only going to have that small little sliver of parking spaces. And then the rest is going to just kind of, I think, be kept natural or have walkways and make it more of like a nature park. And then phase 2 and 3 is on the east side. Part of phase 1 is also on the east side where they're going to have walkways to the beach But they're not putting any restrooms in and things like that until I think phase two. And that, that kind of is counterproductive, right? So if you're going to have people over on the east side and they're going to be using the beach, the last thing you want them to do is not have like a restroom, right? So again, it's a planning issue. It doesn't make sense, but the town wants to hold back all development on the east side. They don't want anybody on the east side. So this is going to be an interesting thing to watch to see how this plays out. The new person that's in office is Marcy Woodward, and see what happens with her negotiations with the town. Up until now, she says that she's willing to kind of work with the town, but there are limitations. They need a certain amount of space. They need a certain amount of parking spaces. They have to open this park up to meet their requirements for the amount of residents they now have. So I guess my point is hindsight, right? Again, it's 2020, and if this was purchased by the town, we wouldn't be here. So, but again, that was before my time. So that's the latest on Milani Park. The green light's been given, and the county is going to start developing this park momentarily. So that's going to be another new park. I know down in Boca they have Ocean Strand. Now that I don't think is a county park. I think that's a city park, but that's one of their brand new parks. And I think that west side has been totally completed. I don't think they've opened it yet. Obviously, the next phase is to open the east side of that park. But there is a lot of parks in this area, and so this one is in Highland Beach. So I just wanted to kind of go over that. Okay, so let's talk about Delray, right? A lot of things going on in Delray, and not many people are talking about them. First off, I want to just state that, this is not a political show, so I'm not going to get involved in the politics of this. And I know one of the things that keeps happening or being talked about is there's a very low voting rate in Delray. I think it's 14% or 16%, very low. So the majority of people in Delray are not voting, but the majority of people in Delray are complaining. So unfortunately, the only way to change what's happening in Delray is to vote, right? So if you vote for people that align with your values or what you'd like to see for the town, then hopefully you'll be getting more of what you're looking for. If you don't even bother to vote, then you're not going to be getting what you're looking for and really have no right to complain. So that's my stance on that. Vote. People that complain, the first thing I say to them is, did you vote? And if they say yes, I say, well, maybe the person you voted for wasn't the right person, and then maybe you need to change that. So think about that, right? So let's talk about some things going on in Delray. So there is a new county development, I guess you want to call it, that's going to be started right where the complex is for the DMV, right off of Congress. And there are some county office buildings there. And so basically it's going to be offices, a hotel, a retail center, county offices, and they are going to redo that whole area there. Now, this area has been ripe for redevelopment for a very long time. The buildings that were there, the government offices, are very old. I think they were built in, I want to say, the early 80s. They've had a lot of mold issues there. There's a lot of problems there. So they are going to be redoing that whole space around the Tri-Rail station area there. I know that I had talked to one of the county commissioners when I was in office about in Palm Beach County about taking this space and doing a joint project with Delray. They were all for it. They said that would be a great idea. Get some affordable housing, do mixed use, get them above, do the county offices below. At the time, I was told, though, that, there's a big strained relationship with Delray, and it was probably not something that would work because of the inability to, negotiate or talk or whatever with them or whatever. I also brought this up to a couple of the Delray commissioners, and later on, a few years later, also telling them about there is significant funding. I think it was by Chase that was actually doing railroad corridor development and was offering a ton of grants and funding and everything and resources for towns that were building out by the railroad tracks. And so That was kind of met on deaf ears. Nothing really happened. Again, a cooperative project. This would have been fantastic. Um, so nothing ever came to that. So I think what happened here was the county commission kind of just took it in their own hands and said, look, well, this is what we're doing. And even though it's in Delray, we're in charge of this property. And I think Delray's latest remarks were, well, we weren't even really discussed. No one discussed this with us. No one really kind of talked to us about any of this. And you kind of have to wonder why that is, right? So I don't know what to tell you, but all I know is this would have been a great cooperative project. And, it reminds me of when that George Bush Bridge was being done. And, there was no communication basically going on when that first happened. And I remember pulling up the RFPs and everything on the county website. And Delray wasn't even aware of some of the stuff that was going on or what their plans were being built. And, and again, I'm not blaming just Delray. There's obviously fault on both sides, but it just seems like there's a strained relationship still. And so anyway, so there's going to be a new development over by the Tri-Rail station. It's going to have a lot of different things. And let's hope that they actually build some affordable housing. And I actually went into this, I think it was in one of my earlier episodes where I talked about Boca and Delray, new types of housing developments. It was one of my earlier episodes, and I actually had some really nice designs and schematics as far as what it could look like over there. And I was very excited about this because, if we could have gotten this off, working with Delray, but Delray is just not really interested. So anyway, there you go. So that's kind of really exciting news for that area. Hopefully the DMV will be redone too. Let's hope so, right? Okay, so the next thing that's happening in Delray is the old school square is reemerging again. And I think, again, I really haven't taken a stance on this at all. I've tried to stay out of it. Again, I don't get involved in this political stuff as far as this kind of stuff. And I guess what is surprising to a lot of the residents is that, after the city tried for a year or two, I think, to find another venue that would come in or another management company that would come in and take care of the venue in a more professional manner and have the contacts and the relationships to bring in, bigger shows and talent and everything else, in addition to taking care of the other aspects of the property. That seemed to be a failed attempt. I know that at one point Boca was very interested in coming in and helping Delray get started, get some oversight, some structure to it, using some of their contacts and relationships to kind of get Delray going. And excuse me, that kind of went sour real quick. So it's one of those things, Delray is one of those things where they can't see the forest through the trees. I think there's a lot of people that are involved in Delray. And, what I've always had the opinion that if you see another city or town that's doing something really good, why not use them as a template? Why recreate the wheel? Why put all that energy, effort, when it's already the bureaucracy is just overwhelming at times and the time it takes to do anything. So if you see somebody or another town or whatever doing something well, use them as a template. And this, kind of for Delray is, fits into a lot of things. Affordable housing, the old school square. There's many things in Delray. The canopy, the tree canopy and things like that. Resiliency. So anyway, regarding the old school square emergence is they came recently to a meeting and were invited back to, currently the DDA has taken over and has a contract with the city. And although they've been doing a good job, again, it seems like it's just not really taking off the way it should, right? So yes, they have done a great job. They've done a lot of things that are different. They've tried to bring in some new things and new ideas, which is always appreciated. But that venue, that building, or buildings, really needs, a professional organization to come in. That's what they do. I mean, that's all they do. Now, I had mentioned in an earlier episode that I had approached a couple of the commissioners that I had an entity that was interested in coming in and, kind of, again, giving structure, giving advice, giving help, trying to get that thing going and on a higher level as far as more talent, bigger talent, things like that. And, I was shut down pretty much by the attorney there. And also one of the commissioners was not interested in pursuing it. They wanted to keep it all in Delray in house again. So the DDA was done. And, again, I think sometimes we have to just step back. We have to say, there are people that can do this better. So why not at least learn from them, bring them in, shadow them, use them as a template. And then, sure, at some point in time, you might be able to do it, but why not learn, right? So that's true leadership, right? Is learning from others, and you can't do everything. So, anyway, so they came back, and I know that it's a very controversial thing what they're asking for. Basically, they're asking for, I've listed the three things here. They want basically, again, control of it. They want them in charge. They want, them in charge of management program and this and that. I mean, basically putting them back in. And unfortunately, right now, I think the commission has everybody that is realigned with the old school square on it. So that's probably going to happen. It looks like it is. So, I guess we'll see what happens. But I just thought it was interesting. And I wanted to make note that this is one of the things that just came up and is happening in Delray. And, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier, like in Highland Beach, about not really learning lessons, right? Not really learning lessons and learning from mistakes. We just keep doing the mistakes over and over and over. So again, it just kind of goes back to the same, thing I just discussed earlier, where, these towns and cities and so forth, make mistakes. Of course, the mistakes are happen. No one's perfect. Got it. No problem. But we don't learn from them, right? So we just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over. And then everybody again sits around and says, well, how did that happen? So, or complains. And then I go back into my mantra. Did you vote? And who did you vote for? And maybe next time vote for someone different. So that's going on with Old School Square in Delray. And then there's another, in Delray, there's a big controversy, developer versus historical, keeping the historical aspects of the town and, more of a village-like atmosphere, if you want to call that. So there's a big controversy now, too, with 133rd Road South. It's a one-lane road, and of course, there's agricultural land that's trying to be developed near it. There's a conflict of interest. Why is this being approved, right? The road has to be widened. It has to be expanded. You need sidewalks. You need an in and an out, not just a one-way out of the development, and without it being significantly expanded. So a lot of times, the P&Z board actually denied this. And what we keep seeing happen in the commission now is overturning of the advisory board decisions. And this is really important. So it's a problem because what is the point of having advisory boards if you keep overturning their decisions? Now, with one caveat, obviously, if there's a mistake made by the advisory board, maybe there's an ordinance that they missed, or there's a rule they have to follow they didn't, or whatever, of course, mistakes happen. But if it's just about their decision, right, you have to really respect your advisory boards and your P&Z boards and your financial advisory boards and so forth. So here's an example where an advisory board, the P&Z board, actually denied it, said it was not good for the city, and it gave all its reasons. And here we go. Commission comes in and overturns that. So, it makes you feel like, well, what's going on here? Is there conflicts of interest? Is there favoritism? A lot of times when you do that and you open yourself up like that, you're going to have legal challenges. So many residents in the Borough area of town, again, may want to, make sure they're aware of what's going on over there. And it's a 5.8 acres plot that is, again, was residential that they're trying, agricultural that they're trying to turn to residential. So it's just something to stay aware of. And again, if one of the people that you voted for is overturning the P&Z board and in favor of this, then again, maybe you need to think about, who you voted for if you did vote. Because obviously they don't have, you're not in line with what you're thinking of as far as the development of the city. So again, that's just another aspect of what's going on in Delray. So let's go to Boca Raton, right? So Gumbo Limbo, everybody's favorite in Boca. So again, in June, Gumbo Limbo, Coastal Stewards hired a veterinarian, Shelby Luce, filling the void. And there was 2 other rehabilitation coordinators that were hired. So they applied for their permitting to get back to have a rehabilitation center. But they're also going to be expanding its focus to include human help for manatees, whales, dolphins, and even indirectly penguins. So it's really interesting to see that they're actually going to come back actually bigger and better than ever, right? So in addition to having turtles, they're going to expand their licensing and rehabilitation needs and accessibility to other mammals also. So they are going to also, there's in their final steps of submitting the applications for the actual rehabilitation permit. And that is going to just take a little bit of time, but they seem to be getting back on track after the staff change that was unexpected. And they have everybody in place now. They've been through their training time and center, and they're applying for their permits. So hopefully we will get turtles back soon, in addition to other animals, which is really interesting. A lot of people think that there aren't manatees and dolphins on this coast out in the ocean, and that couldn't be further from the truth. So I've seen many times on the beach here, right in Boca and Highland Beach and Delray, dolphins out there and manatees and their calves out there. So there is a need, and it's nice to have that. But anyway, so I thought that everybody would be happy to hear that. Okay, the commission is also discussing getting a pilot program started for a freebie or circuit type intercity transportation pilot. So most likely this would be just downtown. It would not just be limited to Brightline right now. It would be maybe 5 or 10 cars, and people would be able to access that through an app, and they'd be able to get to certain places in the city or the downtown area. So basically, if you live down there and you say, I want to go to the beach, and you get on the app and they pull up within a certain short period of time, hopefully 5-ish, 10-ish minutes, and they pull up and they take you to the beach. Saves you on parking, time, and everything else, money. So again, this would be a great, for Boca not to have an intra-city transportation right now just seems kind of strange, right? A lot of the other cities here have that. And we really need to kind of get on the ball in Boca and get some type of intra-city transportation. But like I said, it has to be done right. So let's learn from this, right? You can't just have a few cars. I understand this is a pilot program that they're hoping to start. You can't just have a few cars and have people waiting 10, 20, 30 minutes for a freebie or circuit. You need to have them accessible. You need a lot of them. They have to be plentiful. They can't be so restricted on where they can take you. Well, you can't go here, but you have to start there. You have to make it easy for people, right? You want them to use it. So it's really important to make sure that this kind of stuff isn't so restrictive if you want to have something be successful. So let's try to do it the right way and learn from prior attempts. And we really need an intra-city transportation. That would be great. So hopefully that will get approved. Also wanted to talk about award-winning architect Renzo Piano will be transforming Meisner Park venue. So I had done a whole episode on this based on prior designs, and I guess they actually landed on Meisner Park redesign for the actual outdoor venue. And they actually landed on this gentleman, award-winning architect. He's done the Shard in London, the Centre Pompidou in Paris, and the Whitney Museum of American Art in New York. They are going to be breaking ground in 2025, and they want to do this, and again, to make another, central hub and cultural hub in the city. So this is fantastic news. Now, I know The city just signed the land lease for this nonprofit that's actually in charge of building this. And they're going to be doing some fundraising, the nonprofit, because that's going to be all on them to fund this. But the city has signed the land lease for them for the northern part of Meisner to allow them to do this. So let's hope they get a lot of donations and are off and running. This is a great first step that they hired this award-winning architect. So let's kudos to them. That's great. They're moving forward on this. And again, I covered this in one of my prior episodes, kind of what the idea is and what they want to do there. I think it's In the Middle and Out of the Box, episode 26. And that was the actual footprint they were looking for. This was some of the designs, and there's a bunch in there that we're looking for the designs. And again, just to make that the central cultural hub of Meisner and Boca. Again, giving it a destination, right? So, again, kind of getting out of the high school auditorium phase. So we're trying to, elevate the cultural offerings in Boca. So the next thing I'm going to talk about, which I mentioned, is the housing market. As we all know, interest rates have gone up from, 3-ish% to 6-7-ish%. And a lot of times people say, well, I can't move now because I don't want to lose my 3% or 4%, whatever you have. And if I purchase another property, I'm going to lose that mortgage. So there is something that is available that most people aren't aware of, and it's called portability or porting your mortgage. So it really depends on your lender. A lot of lenders don't advertise they do this. They probably won't admit that they do this. You have to kind of really dig. But a lot of them actually do this. So what you have to do is find out if one of your lenders that you're interested in, or maybe go to a lender that does do this. And so porting a mortgage is when you transfer your existing mortgage deal when you move to a new home. So instead of taking out a new mortgage, they actually take that mortgage and move it to the new property. So finding a new home doesn't necessarily mean that you need to give up your current mortgage deal. By porting your mortgage, you can take your interest rate and the same mortgage terms with you to your new property. I know a lot of people are in shock right now, but just stick with me. So basically, when you move, you may have the option to port your mortgage. This lets you transfer the mortgage deal that you currently have, which I just explained, to the new property with you. So instead of taking out a completely new mortgage, you use the money raised from the sale of your property to pay off your existing mortgage, and you take out a mortgage on the same terms in your existing provider to cover the cost of your new home. So you're basically porting that mortgage to the new property. So again, can you port a mortgage? This will come down to your current lender. When porting a mortgage, the lender will carry out affordability checks to ensure that you can still afford the loan. So you still have to qualify again and everything else, but basically you're taking your current interest rate that you have on your current home and you're able to apply it to your new property. So this is really something, again, very few people know about, is porting their mortgage or portability. So it's something you really should look into. Ask your lender if they do that, and then go out and find a new property, because this would alleviate the kind of standstill we're in right now where people don't want to move. People are here trying to buy. There's no inventory. That's causing the prices to continue to go up in certain levels. And usually those levels are a little bit over 500, 600,000 is where there's still a lot of appreciation going on and activity. So it's really the lower end that's kind of stagnant right now. We're kind of in a lock because of these interest rates and nobody wanting to move off of where they're at or lose what they have. You don't necessarily need to if you can port your mortgage. So again, great option. Just wanted to point that out to people that aren't aware of that. Okay, so let's go to something fun. Disney World, right? New edition. So Dino Land at Disney's Animal Kingdom will be getting a retheme to the Tropical Americas. It will feature a casita from the Encanto series, and Indiana Jones will also have a presence of some kind there as well. So there's no time frame or further details given as yet, but they are going to be redoing the whole Dino Land area and incorporating some newer themes into that area and redoing it. So that's kind of fun to know about, especially if you like Encanto. Disney has also announced that they're going to have a new version of Test Truck coming to Epcot. So I'm sure we've all been on Test Track at Epcot. Um, they're redoing the cars and they're going to be redoing the actual track itself. And so that's going to be being redone too. That's, time for a new theme there, retheme there also. So just wanted to announce that. And I wanted to get into science and technology, right? So I know we have quite a few manufacturers actually down here in South Florida that are doing these flying cars. And so this is one of the latest that has come out. They seem to be getting better and better at the precision of them and the design of them. Hopefully, the pricing and once they go to production will be getting lower and lower as they get more popular. But just wanted to show what the latest was in flying cars. So take a look. Okay, so this is science and technology. So this is really neat. Beautiful design concept. It's called an aero bicycle. And this is the latest and greatest. I'm trying to, I think, put something like this in production. So for all those bicycle enthusiasts out there, which we know we have a lot of in Boca del Rey and Highland Beach, this is a new concept in bicycles. So I just wanted to show that. And then this was really neat. Kind of gives the meaning to painting the town red, right? So as far as going out and having a fun time. So this was a marketing promotion, and it was, I think, in Paris. And, when they do marketing over there, they really do a lot of old school kind of stuff. And it's really so thought provoking. And I just thought, this is a great way to show kind of how marketing can be done, sometimes the right way. So take a look at this and see if you like it. Okay, so this week's art, I saw this and I was like, this is fantastic, right? So this is a dragonfly close up, right? Look at the expression on this dragonfly's face. I mean, he's excited. He's ecstatic. He's got stuff all over his lips and on his little hairs and his eyeballs, and he just looks so happy. So I was like, this is great. I'm going to put this in art. And it's so funny how sometimes we don't think about how we see things close up or not in nature. So I thought that was kind of cute. And again, this is another street art that I saw. I know I had shown one last week, but this was cute. They're using these hydrangeas as ice cream cones. And again, just something so cute, something inexpensive that could be done along the way. This was really interesting, right? So it looks like horses, but is it? Is it really horses? So this is one of those things where you look at it and you think you see something, but that's not really what this is. So I'm going to go to the next slide and show you what it really is. It's actually zebras. So it's actually zebras, and the shadows that they're giving off looks like horses. So it's kind of one of those really interesting things. Like, don't always think you see something or judge a book by its cover or know what it is until you really know what it is. And it's funny, when I saw this, I'll go back to the other one. When I saw this, I said to myself, wow, I said, that's just like so amazing how well the zebras camouflage into their environment, right? The sand or whatever that is. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. So again, close up, it's really zebras. And then it's funny because right after that, I had gotten a picture somebody sent me. And you're sitting here saying to yourself, what is this girl sitting in? Like a hole? Like what? How is she in the middle of the road? Where's the rest of her, right? So again, it's one of those plays on your eyes, right? So if you actually look in this picture where her elbow meets, it's actually a stone wall there. So she's actually walking next to a stone wall that's high, above waist level, and that's why it looks like half of her is not there. So again, just tricks on the eyes. I thought that was kind of a neat thing to show for art this week. And I guess that's it. So have a great week. Again, I will be back when there's some additional, the towns. I know Boca this week is coming up, is going to be having meetings. And so hopefully there'll be a lot coming up there. I know Delray is going to be talking about some additional things ongoing. And Highland Beach, whenever there's an update, we will bring it to you. But, keep informed. And I hope you enjoyed this show. Again, I try to stay middle of the road, just presenting facts and some experience that I've had in those towns and cities, even as a vice mayor, and hopefully we can learn from them. And enjoy your week. And I'm going to end on my 2 pictures and see you next time.